Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. There's trouble in Asia. There's politics in America, but there's trouble in Asia. And tonight, my colleague and co-host Gordon Chang of the Daily Beast and I will be traveling across the map of Asia to look in at various mysteries that have developed these last months that very easily could turn into conflict zones. We're going to begin in East Asia. We're going to look at the conflict over the South China Sea from the point of view of Manila. But we're also going to travel to Delhi to talk about firefights along the line of control, Kashmir, between India and Pakistan. And always we'll be looking for China. What is China's interest? What is China's part in this, if any? We'll be looking to connect the dots to China. Why? Because China is the rising power, and over these last months, it's made it very clear that it means to challenge the United States and the alliance the United States enjoys in Asia, challenge it directly, militarily, diplomatically, and the Philippines. Manila, Reuters. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte said on Sunday he had received support from Russia and China when he complained to them about the United States. We welcome our colleague Walter Lohman, Director of Asia Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation. Walter, there's nothing disguised about that. China's mentioned in the lead. Duterte, does he gain from this? Where's he going, baiting the United States? And does China gain from this, with Duterte speaking well of them? Good evening to you.
Good evening. I think to some extent Duterte is stuck in another era. I mean, I think what he's trying to do, it's almost transparent. He's trying to leverage support from China by threatening the United States and the alliance, and same with Russia. But, it doesn't really work that way anymore. To some extent, he's welcome to go talk to the Chinese, and that's fine with us. And we can find other ways to deal with the threats that we have in the region. If not the Philippines, we've got other options. I think the worst thing we could do is play into his hands and getting to some sort of bidding war with the Chinese.
The Chinese are going to give him a hard time because that's the way they operate. Mm-hmm. If they think they have Duterte where they want him, Duterte's not going to get the deal that he thinks he deserves. And if he's angry at us, he's probably going to end up angry at Beijing and Moscow as well. So, Walter, when you look at this, doesn't it look like Duterte has the most to lose out of all this, because the Chinese are now threatening to make permanent its act of seizure of Scarborough Shoal, just as they took Mischief Reef?
That's a really good point, that the Chinese are not going to deal with him the way that he thinks they're going to deal with him. He can't afford really to scrap this ruling that he got on the South China Sea out of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, but that's what the Chinese are going to demand of him. He thinks that somehow he's going to meet with them, he's going to talk about things, and he's going to be able to raise this issue. They won't meet with him if that's what he wants to do. They really have the strongest hand here. Another thing about the Chinese, I think the Chinese are not too comfortable with a guy like Duterte. He's loud, he's obnoxious, he's unpredictable. And if the Chinese calculation has to be if he'll do this to the United States, what is he going to do to us? So I actually don't think they're going to be too eager to take him up on this. I think he's the type of person that kind of worries them a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure that he does. And you got to remember that Duterte and a lot of Philippine businessmen are going to be in the Chinese capital about a week and a half from now. So we're going to have a real-life experiment on what goes on. One of the things I think is important, and Americans don't understand this, and that is, yes, Duterte is the most powerful political figure in the Philippines right now, but he's not the Philippine government. And when you look at the Philippine security establishment and the military establishment, they're firmly behind the United States. So every time Duterte says something which really is intended to aggravate Washington, you have, for instance, the foreign minister, Perfecto Yase, say, no, he didn't really say that. It's sort of like Mike Pence at the debate, say, oh, no, Trump didn't say that. I think it's important that we understand that we have a lot of friends in Manila, and they'll stay with us through the 6 years of Duterte, no matter how bad it may seem at any one particular moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't confuse the Philippine president for the American president in the way that his role works within the government. This could easily turn out to the government trying to work around him as he continues to shoot his mouth off, and they try to make things work. I mean, as we speak, the U.S. is engaged in some joint military exercises with the Filipinos, so we can continue to do what's necessary, even if he's shooting his mouth off. That's certainly one possibility.
Gentlemen, I want to be suspicious from the outside. Duterte is elected, yes, and perhaps there's just a coincidence, but he emerges as this temperamental character. Just as the Hague rules, the 9-dash line is non-existent, and that the Scarborough Shoals is Filipino territory, and that the Chinese threat to militarize it will be regarded as unlawful. That's when Duterte starts speaking in this reckless fashion. Is there a connection, Walter?
Well, I don't know if there's a connection, but the Filipino political system is highly irregular, let's say, the way that it treats campaign contributions and the like. So I wouldn't be surprised if he were taking money for the service he's providing, but I can't say. I don't know.
I know, but it's suggestive, isn't it, Gordon?
Well, I actually think that Duterte is genuinely anti-American. He's doing this because he can do this, because he's wanted to do this all his life.
Does that mean the Chinese hired the right person?
No, I think that they got lucky. Every once in a while you get a genuinely anti-American Philippine leader. And, it hasn't happened in quite a long time, so we're all taken aback by it. But nonetheless, this is going to be something we're just going to have to deal with. And, Walter is absolutely 100% right. The Chinese look at Duterte and they say, what the hell is going on? And they've got to be unnerved by all of this.
Well, unnerved, but Walter, I'll press you on this. The Scarborough Shoal, that's not resolved, right? The Chinese are still threatening to militarize it. Duterte is not acting like a man who's going to object very much.
Yeah. Well, I think that some of these issues will hurt him at home, though. One of his predecessors, Gloria Arroyo, the whole conflict over South China Sea, and South China Sea mixed in with some corruption, brought her presidency down. So he doesn't have all the room in the world. There's only so far he can go on this. If he appears to be compromising Filipino sovereignty with China, he'll be in trouble for it.
He'll be more than just trouble. He'll be out of power.
Yeah,
because
right.
No Philippine leader, especially in a country with that culture, can ever afford to give up an inch of sovereign Philippine territory to the Chinese. And so, Scarborough Shoal, Second Thomas Shoal, all the other bits and specks and features in the South China Sea, none of this is negotiable from the Philippine point of view. Right. So Duterte has virtually no room to maneuver on these issues.
Walter, how does this read in Beijing? To the people of China, that's an important audience here. Do they think that the Philippines is coming our way?
I think your average informed reader might get that feeling, but I think they'd be overlooking just too much equity that the Filipinos have in the U.S. relationship. I mean, by polling, Philippines is the most pro-American country in the world. We've got a security alliance with them. We do all these exercises. We've got troops there. It's so really fundamental that it's really hard to...
I want to translate this in Washington. Is there alarm at state about Duterte, or are they shrugging?
I think they're mostly shrugging, at least publicly. I think maybe they have some concerns behind the scenes, but they're trying to play it cool. I think the same is with the Defense Department. But I think that's all they can do. I think right now, for the reasons Gordon was saying, you don't want to overreact to something that this loudmouth is saying and then jeopardize the relationship and all the people behind the scenes that are really making the relationship work.
And John, on that, the State Department has put one of its smoothest diplomats into the Philippines to be ambassador. So, I think they've got this covered.
Walter Lohman is director of the Asian Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation. Gordon Chang of the Daily Beast. India next. I'm John Batchelor.